What's up, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to Don't Say the F Word, Pro Wrestling and Combat Sports Podcast, where we do not use the F word whenever we talk about professional wrestling. Today, we are here with the new Middleweight Champion of the World and Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, Dave Redneck Mundell. Dave, how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. Yourself?
Living the dream, bud. How's that feel? World champion, middleweight world champion. How's that feel to hear that?
Everyone keeps asking that same question, man. I feel the same. Nothing's changed. No, I feel like I'm the same person. I'm still grinding, still pushing forward.
Yeah. How'd it feel to get the belt, though? That had to feel rewarding.
It does. It feels good. It's reassuring, because like I said, I already felt like I was a champ. I felt like I deserved the shot a long time ago, and to get up there and get it in the fashion that I did really puts a statement out there, and it feels good. But it was a bittersweet fight, Richie's a friend of mine, so
yeah.
So you talk about deserving that title shot and looking at your career. So you've had a few fights bare knuckle, but that's not the full extent of your combat sports career. You did some MMA prior to bare knuckle, and are you still doing MMA now?
I am not. Bare knuckle has kind of consumed me. It's my new passion, Not to say I would never go back to it. It's just, at the moment, it's not worth it for me.
Absolutely. I mean, you're finding great success with bare knuckle, and it's a growing sport, especially here in the States. I mean, I think its popularity really kicked off great in the UK initially, but watching the boom with bare knuckle in the States it reminds me of MMA late 90s, early 2000s, where you have some parts of the sports world look at it and see it as something barbaric. And I hate to use all the cliches that were used with the UFC back in the day of the human cockfighting and all that stuff. And that time frame is whenever I fell in love with MMA, and I started training jiu-jitsu and different martial arts. And I remember those conversations with people and explaining to people what MMA was and what the UFC was. And so many people drew the parallels to pro wrestling, and they didn't understand that it was real sport. And I look at people now whenever I talk about bare knuckle to friends of mine who are heavy into MMA now, who honestly weren't 20 years ago, but they look at guys who are doing bare knuckle and they see it as being something barbaric. And to me, it's crazy that people think that, and people who are even UFC and MMA fans, I just think there's so many elements to all combat sports, and I don't see any of it as barbaric. It's just different layers of the same sports. Like, how do you feel whenever you look at MMA and you look at bare knuckle? Do you see those same parallels?
I don't. I actually, believe it or not, I think that BKFC is safer. I've actually sustained less injuries, as far as getting ready for the fights. I go in there feeling a lot better, a lot closer to 100% than if I was getting ready for an MMA fight. And then actually being in there, I don't feel like, without gloves on, I don't feel like you can hit somebody as hard as if you had gloves on. And then when you get hit with the glove, you can get hit a few more times, so to speak. So as far as like brain damage, like stuff like that, I just feel like it's less likely to happen.
Yeah, I for sure agree with that, because that's one of the things I think about. Like, I think in training with gloves on, I always felt like I could, if a wrapped hand, taped up hand, and a 14-ounce glove on, I could punch a concrete wall and I'm good. And I can throw that thing full clip and it doesn't really matter. No gloves, like you gotta hold back a little. You can't throw a full clip. You're gonna break your hand.
Exactly. I remember, it's been a learning curve for me. As I went in, I think it was the fight against Hector. The very first punch I threw, I broke my left hand, and I mean I threw all out and I just chucked it because I seen an opening, and I wound up hitting him in the forehead, which is what did it. So I learned to pick my shots a lot better. I like to beat up the body a little bit more now because I feel like it's a little bit safer on my hands. And it's definitely different when you ain't got the whole cast and protection. You cannot punch as hard.
Yeah, I think people who've never had their hands properly wrapped or taped up well, they don't understand the level of, I don't want to say reinforcement, but I almost feel like that's kind of what happens. You almost mummify that fist, and it really changes what the weapon of a fist really is. You mentioned the Lombard fight, and you talk that the shot you threw with the left that broke your hand. Is that the one that gave him the big goose egg on his forehead there? Is that what did that?
Very first one I threw right down the middle, the very first exchange, and it set the tempo for the fight. But it made him not want to run in there, but it also made me not be able to utilize my left.
Yeah, talk about the Hector Lombard fight. I went back and I watched it 2 more times today, and I paid attention to kind of commentary because I watched it before, and I felt like the commentary was almost one-sided, where it was almost Hector Lombard had at that time a huge name, and he brought with him a lot of notoriety, and they almost spoke about it as if it was a foregone conclusion that Hector was probably going to come out there full clip, and I think they expected him to bring forth this decisive victory over you. I don't think they anticipated the style at which you would fight that fight, or that Hector was going to be so hesitant. And I have to assume that left that you threw that gave him the goose egg changed his approach to fighting you, because he did not want to take another one.
There's I mean, a lot of the guys that I've fought are known to brawl with people, but I feel like, when somebody gets hit with a solid shot, it makes them rethink a lot of stuff. And especially if they get hit hard, it's like, oh, wow, this guy can hurt me. Like, I got to be on my toes here. And I think that's exactly what happened. He was a brawler, but he got stuck with that first shot. And he was just like, I don't want to get knocked out in front of everybody. So he's like, I'm going to play this a little safer and try to take a different approach, and made for a slow fight. But I didn't really have much of a choice. It's not like I could run in there with one hand either. So.
And you say a slow fight, but I mean, bare knuckle, the rounds are shorter. We're not dealing with 5-minute rounds. How long are the rounds?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. So I mean, you have an opportunity to push the action. And whenever I've talked to people, I'm like, if you like an action-packed fight, bare knuckle is the way to go, because we're not. I'm not going to name any fighters who it's a lay and pray situation, but we've all seen those guys who are very talented. They're great grapplers, but sometimes that strategy is to get a guy on the ground and, for lack of a better term, or dry hump him for 5 minutes and stall things out, and we're going to get some points, and we're going to land a few rabbit punches here and there, but we're not going to work for a submission. We're going to hold a dominant position, stay there. In bare knuckle, there's no locking up in the clinch against the cage, and we're going to stall. It's just we're throwing to, do damage. And I think people aren't necessarily always catching on to that element of that. It's just so action-packed. It's a different animal than boxing. It's a different animal than kickboxing. It's special.
Yeah, it definitely makes for more exciting fights, and for, a lot of people love to see blood. Knuckles cut us open more.
Yeah.
But it looks bad, but it's really not. So it's fast paced because you have 2 minutes to go in there and work. So it kind of forces you to take control right away and just establish what's going on so that you can walk away with that victory. And fighting that Hector fight, I learned they do like to see a little bit more of the brawling side. They want to see, people stepping up, going forward. It is 2 minutes, so you shouldn't be getting extremely tired, although it can get that way real fast when you're chucking out there like that. So there's a balance to everything, and I think I've hit the sweet spot right now. So
yeah,
we'll see how long I run with it.
That decision of the Lombard fight, and it's not just because you're sitting here talking to me now. I didn't agree with that decision, and I think maybe you're right. Maybe those judges do look for more of that brawling style, because I looked at how you fought Hector Lombard. You stayed on the outside of his reach, which really a really dangerous spot to be. I mean, he throws those punches, You being at the outside, if he lands, you're at 100% extension, you're at 100% of his power. But you were able to stay just far enough away. And as he threw those shots, you were meeting him and connecting before him. You were milliseconds faster than Hector Lombard. And every time he tried to hit you, he paid for it. You were getting there and catching him at the best opportunity to make him second guess even throwing punches at you.
Yeah. No, I definitely felt I was the better boxer. I definitely felt I outboxed him, in any other situation. I definitely felt I won that fight, and I still feel like I won that fight. But I understand that maybe the judges were rooting for him because he was a Miami guy and we were in Miami. Oh, they wanted to see more of a brawl, and they were disappointed that I didn't go in there and do it. But I did feel like I also walked in that fight, and they all expected him to put me to sleep. They didn't expect old Redneck to hang in there and do some work, But
Yeah.
as ever, I think, we all learn from it. That's okay. We move on.
So, as you prepared for the Ricci fight and you were, looking at the Lombard fight, you stayed to the outside of things. At the fight Saturday, you were changing levels so much. And was that just to counter that he had a height advantage, he had a reach advantage, and if you want to call it an advantage, but he had those things that were, his reach advantage was several inches, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
He's a tall guy. He was a tall opponent. I brought in a lot of taller boxers, to help me out with that. And I got to really give it to Ricci because he made me elevate myself. He made me train really hard because I was worried going into that fight. I was nervous. I mean, as anybody would be, but
Yeah.
I knew I had a head on my hands. I knew that no matter what, like if he was able to fight, he was going to get up and he was going to fight. So I was fully prepared to go 5 rounds. I was in great shape, and I was just hoping for the best, and I was just going to go out there and do exactly what we trained to do, and it worked out for us. So the level changes does help keep him guessing. We didn't want him to be able to find a target. I want to make a bad target. I didn't want him to know what I was doing because he was very slick with catching people as they came in, as you can watch in all those other fights. Anyone who could dash, he throws that slick little uppercut, and I trained so hard to avoid that damn punch, and like the first exchange hit me with it, and the whole side of my face is like hard to chew right now. So I had to make adjustments even there to like, okay, well, I can't jump in no more. I got to stop going so low, and I got to start coming up higher, and it all worked out. But it was all part of the strategy.
Yeah, I mean, you knocked him down 4 times in that fight. 2 of those were round 2, right?
In round 1. Round 2, I didn't knock him down at all. I actually think he may have stole that round. He came out pretty hard, and I kind of dialed back and was trying to figure out how to get back in there, and like maybe he was catching up to what I was doing. And then round 3, I dropped him with a body shot, which opened up the ending shot.
Yeah, watching the way you put combinations together against him and the changing of the levels it's impressive because that height difference, that reach difference, and whenever I see someone be able to change their game for their opponent like that, it's very reminiscent of it reminds me of Tyson, as Mike Tyson fought those taller boxers who had the reach. He worked into the pocket. He changed his levels. He slipped the jabs, and he slipped all those punches meant to keep him at bay and at the end of those guys' punches. And it's interesting because the style that you use with Hector Lombard, where you put yourself at his 100% of his punch and just got out of the way. With Ricci, you got in there and you were changing levels to connect, and it really shows where you elevated your game and just how you're able to just change things up. And I think anyone who's coming after that belt is going to really have a hard time because clearly your game's going to change based upon who's on the other side of that ring.
Is always evolving, and we take every fight, depending on the opponent, we look for the closest style and we train for it, I always try to stay true to my own style. I like baiting people forward. I was even able to do that with Ricci. I just feel like I'm a great counterpuncher. I have great eyes. I'm not the most athletic. I have to work really hard for anything that you see as far as speed and stuff like that. But I feel like I have a high fight IQ too. So if I can see what someone's looking for and I can kind of get a jump on that, I feel very comfortable. So being able to pull someone forward that's my game. But if I need to walk somebody down, I am capable of doing that as well.
So, how did you get started in combat sports? What was your first, you know, partaking? What was your first style? What was the first thing you started learning? Were you always martial artist? Were you always a boxer?
I guess it started in high school. My senior year, I decided to wrestle instead of play football, and I kind of just fell in love with that. The whole vibe from the wrestling team, being brothers with everybody, and it really kind of like it was just awesome. So then school ended, and it's like, well, damn, like what do I do now? So I had some buddies that were like, come on, try jujitsu. And so I did that, and then I remember they're like, oh, you should try some boxing, or it was kickboxing or whatever. I'm like, nah, I don't want to get punched in the face. I tried that and I fell in love with that. And before you know it, 6 months later, I had my first amateur MMA fight. And then from there, it just took off. I've been fighting since.
So, what year was your first amateur MMA fight?
Uh, December of 2011.
So, you're in Florida now. You're a Florida native?
I am born and raised.
That's awesome. So, I'm I'm pretty opinionated about amateur MMA, and I take some heat from some people in my opinion of it. And I'm in Ohio. I'm just outside of Cleveland. When I got started training and fighting, MMA wasn't sanctioned everywhere. There was
Ohio as well. I didn't mean to cut you off, but she heard you.
yeah, Florida gets a lot of Ohio transplants. A lot of people, snowbirds end up there, and they realize, that Cleveland weather ain't worth coming back for.
It's beautiful here all year round. I mean, when it's cold here, it's not cold like other places, but it's too cold for us Florida people. But it's maybe 2 months if at the worst, and right back to summertime. So
yeah, the Ohio cold coming off Lake Erie, it'll change your mood real quick, and the wind will get straight disrespectful.
I like to visit it, and that's about it. I would not want to live there, that's for sure.
Yeah, it takes a different kind of breed to love it, and I've been here my whole life, and I'm not gonna tell you I love the weather by any means. But whenever it came to amateur MMA, I got started, and MMA wasn't sanctioned everywhere, and you could kind of anyone with 10 grand and 3 letters to rub together could start an MMA promotion. And then amateur MMA came around, and I wasn't the biggest fan because I felt like there were people getting paid that weren't fighting. And so I really I took a step back from that. So I'm like, so promoters are getting paid, but the guys out there fighting aren't getting paid. And you try to negotiate some things like, well, I can't pay you. If you get paid, you're not going to be able to be licensed. Like, well, I mean, to me, like, that's silly. Is that kind of how things were in Florida? Was it the same kind of situation?
And as an amateur, they're not supposed to pay you for, participating in the sport. But, the way I made money as an amateur fighter was 1, sponsors, and 2, ticket sales. I did very well as an amateur. I have, a big family that supports me. I have a lot of friends that still ride with me now. And so I made a little bit, enough to fund the camps and to continue to do it until I eventually became pro. And then even then, in the beginning stages of MMA, it's ridiculous what they pay you. It's nothing, it's ridiculous. But we stuck with it and we kept grinding, and it got a little bit better, but BKFC is where it's at.
Yeah, I mean, you see the crowds coming into the bare knuckle fighting, and it's impressive to see the live crowds. I mean, Shaq was in attendance on Saturday night. Like, that's cool. That's gotta feel really cool, right?
In my RFC days now too. He's seen me a few times.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Where in your career did boom start being your thing? I see it on the hat. It's on the banner behind you whenever you fight. When did boom become the redneck thing?
Just something that I've always said, and it just kind of like picked up in the gym, and then from there, I got with Team Reaper, or Rip Life One at the time, and we started making shirts. And you just kind of like play with things or whatever, and we put Boom on the shirt, and we had it in, and it just kind of took off. And then like a lot of people around here say it. I mean, for instance, like a lot of the kids around here, like my son, he'll always be like, bet. I say Boom, same thing, but different, I guess. I don't know, but I don't know an exact time, but it's been around for a while, and it just took off. It's kind of funny, but it's my little thing.
So I know you're a family man. How many kids you got?
Two.
Two kids? Two boys?
A boy and a girl. Son's 13. My daughter's 8.
How do you feel about dad fighting?
They love it. They're all like, especially now, like now they get to go tell their friends and get to like brag about me, and they feel cool. And they get to show them videos. Son thinks him and all his little lunch buddies are gonna beat me up.
That's funny. They have an interest in martial arts. They have an interest in none. For me and my wife, we have one daughter. She's 24 now. We got started really early, and she grew up in the gym with me, and she became so desensitized to just MMA and boxing, and just big dudes, throwing haymakers at each other all the time. Like, she would be in high school and like a little brawl would break out and everyone would be all excited, and she'd be like, they don't even know how to throw a punch. Like she was doing jiu-jitsu when she was doing grappling whenever she was 7. So all that stuff like never fazed her. She's like, whatever, that's what me and my dad do all the time. It's not a big deal at all.
Great for any kids to like learn the stuff too, for that reason. Like just to know how to protect yourself, and like you said, I feel like people who know how to fight are a lot less likely to fight, or it's because it was super necessary, so. But they play around, but they don't want to go to the gym. They're not about that yet. Hopefully one day.
And you never know. Never know. They got that fighter DNA. It doesn't really. I don't think it skips generations. It just may lay dormant until they find their thing.
They love fighting with each other, but drive me crazy. But it's about that.
So you still got the little lump under the eye, but overall, you feel good, feel healthy.
I recover fairly quickly. We get the superficial cuts, they get stitch them up, and they heal within like a week or two. Well, they close up with a week or two and a little bit longer before I actually start doing like contact and sparring again. But I've already been back to the gym, not
Awesome.
boxing or anything, but just back lifting weights and doing my cardio and all that stuff. And then probably next week I'll be back in there training shadow boxing and going through whatever's next. We stay moving.
So realistically, like, ideally, how many fights would you like to have on your calendar year in bare knuckle? What do you think's really like achievable?
3 is a fair number, right? And that's just because a lot goes into a camp. Like when you take this as seriously as I do, and the amount of work and dedication it takes away from a lot of family time, a lot of home projects. I got a lot of stuff that I got to do around the house now to catch up. We went through a kitchen remodel in the middle of my crazy, but we made it happen. But now it's time to button up all the loose ends, and anything more than that, not that, like I can be recovered and ready physically and mentally, but it's just hard because life, all around you, things that you got to do every day. And unfortunately, I still have to work full time as well. So I'm working full time. I come home and I train. I'm just gone from 6:30 in the morning till 10 at night, and coming home and going right to bed and trying to do it all again the next day, 6 days a week. It catches up. So having a little time like this, I actually, every time you get cut, you get suspended automatically. It's not a big deal. It's just what happens. So I got a 45-day suspension for the cut above my eye. So I'll take, this time, just relax it. And then after that, that's when we'll start looking for the next fight or see what they present to us.
That grind of working full-time, training full-time, competing on a regular basis, that's got to really pull a lot out of you. What's your full-time gig? What's the job?
An electrician.
So you don't even have an easy one, man. You're not even out there sitting in an office, chilling on a computer.
In trenches, laying pipe, pulling wire, you name it, rewiring houses. It's what I do. Keeps me young.
And that's a hell of a grind. But I mean, those grinds I think really like make some of the greatest champions in combat sports. I mean, you look at Stipe, he's without a question the biggest heavyweight as far as defenses go of the title and his output, and still operates as a fireman. Crazy.
My teammate Jared Warren, he's going to be making a run at the 85-pound belt again here shortly. He's a fireman too.
Yeah, and I look at like that job in of itself, and even an electrician. Being an electrician is not easy work by any means. You're dealing with the physical labor and the mental labor of knowing the knowledge that you know to make sure you're wiring everything up correctly. Commercial, residential jobs, that's physical labor. That's a lot going into that. Then you're throwing in, if you're getting up early in the morning for that, you're getting home, trying to get a meal in, trying to hit the gym, trying to get in a sparring session, trying to get back home, get something else in your body, spend time with the kids, spend time with the missus. That's just like, that's that level of dedication and output that I think a lot of people just don't have. They just don't have it in them. But like, it's so respectable from me as a guy who, never at your level, never at any of these guys' level. But for me, like, just that grinding. A lot of people can't get to the gym to just hit the treadmill every day, let alone do the things that you're doing.
I know plenty of those people, trust me. No one ever has time unless you make it, So it's hard, but it's once you get into a rhythm, into the groove of things, and you just do it, it becomes easier.
Man,
get on that ball, but it's possible.
How's the missus feel about the exposure you're getting with bare knuckle and how things are going with that career? And
she don't give a shit.
So where do you see bare knuckle as a sport in the U.S. inside the next 3 years?
Oh, it's blowing up. It's growing. Every month it's getting bigger and bigger. You hear, I'm getting more and more people from out of state just now, like, oh, hey man, I caught your fight. That was awesome stuff. And so I'm actually seeing the outreach of them because they're the ones that are promoting me and stuff. I'm fighting for them. They're blasting me out there, So, and just to see from where it came when I did my first show 4.5 years ago, when it was first in Tampa, to now, it's just crazy. It's crazy. It's growing so fast.
So what all states have sanctioned bare knuckle in the U.S.?
That is something I do not know for sure.
Man. I know there's been some states where they've had some roadblocks in their way, and which is crazy to me that you're sanctioning MMA, but you won't sanction bare knuckle boxing. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Again, like, that goes back to what you were saying. Some people think it's barbaric or whatever, but I think it's safer. It's a he said, she said thing, and until they do it or fully understand, it's what it is. It doesn't matter though, because the places that they are getting into, it's enough.
Yeah.
Getting out there, and they're putting venues on, almost every weekend now. It seems like they got one this weekend. They had mine. They had a one the weekend before that. The weekend before. So it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's always on.
Yeah, the output is kind of crazy what they're able to put together. Because you look at like the slow growth of the UFC and how long it took to get to, UFC 50 and then UFC 100. Like, you just did BKFC 34, right? And man, it's that growth and that output is really, it's fantastic to see, because giving guys an opportunity to go out there and show their art and make some money.
Yeah. They were just saying something in the back about hopefully some type of new deal they got coming into, promising fighters more. So I'm excited to see what's coming next, man. Like I said, I'm here with them because I believe in them, and I know and I see the growth. So we're gonna ride it out for a while.
That's awesome, man. one thing I love to ask everybody: three biggest influences on you in your combat sports career. What are the three biggest influences? Whether it be a moment, something you've seen, a person. What are the three biggest influences?
When I was a kid, I used to watch Dragon Ball Z. Made me think I was a little ninja. I mean, I don't know, just things happening in school and just realizing I don't want to take shit from nobody and standing up for myself, and then learning like, oh shit, I can fight, and then that was that. So I don't really have a particular time or moments or anything, but it's just, yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to always pinpoint those influential moments, but man, Dragon Ball Z, it brought a lot of people into karate, studios, and got a lot of people into weightlifting and bodybuilding. Like, I think I draw those parallels of pro wrestling to anime. I think pro wrestling, I'm a pro wrestling fan. The podcast is really focused on pro wrestling and combat sports. But I had someone tell me pro wrestling is anime for rednecks. And I think, man, that's just spot on.
Well,
and I appreciate you, taking the time to do the interview. Where can listeners find Dave Redneck Mundell? Where can they keep up with you? Plug social media. Where can people find you at?
On social media, on my Instagram and my fan page for Facebook, is just under Redneck Mundell. Very simple. I like to keep everything simple. It's the easiest thing. It's my name. It's who I am.
Yeah.
So what time frame? When do you think next? What do you think the title defense? That first title defense. What are we looking at?
I'm not sure. Probably 3 to 4 months, I would say. That's usually about. This seems to be what the going rate right now. If they wanted something sooner or later, or whoever is going to step up and be next, I'm just right now. It's too soon to think about, but I'll be ready.
Awesome, man. Who do you think out there is probably first in line? I know you don't get to make the call, but who do you think it'll be?
I honestly think they're gearing me up for Mike Perry. I don't see anybody else that makes sense in the 175-pound division. They had Thiago that had the belt. He was supposed to fight Richmond. I don't know whatever happened to that. Richmond moved up. Then you had Riki fight Yuli Diaz for the belt. So those two top contenders already went through. So the only person that's fighting that I know of that's undefeated is him, and we have a little bit of history. So I said, let's run it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that would be a great fight. And now, yeah, I'm interested to see how that goes this time around. Like, you guys, I think
he's taller and I'm technical, and I think I take it home all day. But
I
want to prove it to everybody else.
Yeah, I'm not gonna jinx anything, but I certainly agree with you. Yeah. Well, Dave, I appreciate you taking the time. I think all our listeners are going to enjoy hearing, getting to know you a little bit better, and I hope we can bring some more eyes to the bare knuckle product. I think it's a great combat sport. I think there's tons of competition. It's very action packed and fast paced, and I think there's something for everyone who enjoys combat sports or any sport, honestly. And you got guys out there who put a lot into their art and are really looking to prove something to those watching.
Yeah. It's funny that you said that, like, as far as like anybody who I know, for instance, we had some guys, 4 guys of my friend, my friend had 4 guys fly down. That was his friends. Don't even like watch the UFC or anything. So they're not really fight fans, but they came down to watch me fight for the belt. And that's all they can talk about right now. They keep texting me and sending me fucking off. That was awesome. And it's just over and over again. So it'll make a fan out of you. Just watch it. It's awesome.
It's awesome, man. I couldn't agree more. I think people just need to tune in and check it out. I think if they can get the Fight Plus app, they can go back and watch some prior events and see what it's all about and see some of your previous fights and look to see what the Redneck is all about. And I think they'll be fans immediately.
Absolutely.
All right.
Follow me on my Instagram page. You can go to my link tree, and in there I have a link that if you use it, you get 2 months, the first 2 months free on the BKFC app, and I think you also get a significant amount off if you sign up for the whole year. I'm not exactly sure how it works because I have not used sign up, but I know it's there, and they're always running the ads for me, allowing me to pump that out. And then if they use my link to sign up, I get credit for it, so it's also greatly appreciated.
Awesome, man. I will make sure I'll share that out there through the Don't Say the F Word podcast social media, which we're Don't Say the F Word podcast on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. It's the Don't Say the F Word podcast on YouTube, and people can check us out on Spotify and Google Podcast. Dave, thank you for joining us, and hopefully our fan base will tune in and check you out, man.